Hello and welcome to this edition of Going Public. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside. Thanks so much for joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And listen, we'd like to bring to you updates and information from the people who are the experts when it comes to certain areas. There are no three better people to come on and talk about what happens with us, with levee districts, with protection, with hurricane preparedness than the three gentlemen we have with us. First, we have Mr. Reggie Dupre. Reggie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Sitting next to him, Mr. Wendell Curall. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks a lot. Always a pleasure.
The cure-all, as we've learned it. Next to him, Mr. Mitch Mormon. Mitch, thanks for joining us as well.
Thanks for having us. Keith.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Wendell, let's start with you because it's important to do that as we talk a little bit about what is soon going to be you retiring.
Well,
Tell
I
me
actually
your thoughts
did
of that.
retire on January the 3rd.
Well, you tried, right?
But the word retire and rehire, it's almost the same word, right? I get confused easily. So,
Sure. I'm confused because
So,
I knew
no,
you
no,
retired, but I knew you didn't.
I'm not spending the full 40 hours, or I know a lot of times we do more than 40
50 or
hours. You
60.
do the work you need to.
Right.
But we hired Nick Mathern, who's doing a great job, and he is already doing a great job. So the future looks really good for us and safe for us. So that's a good thing. And you look back on those years. It's 42 years just at the levee district. But before that, I was a Sea Grant agent, working with the fishing industry, and there was some hurricane components to that.
Right.
And you look back and you look at all the stuff, and you got to go back and you got to thank so many people. I look at Dick Guidry starting things, a concurrent resolution in 1951 for the study of looking to some type of flood protection for the South Lafourche area.
Right.
And I started working in 1980 with the hurricanes. And again, I had worked as a Sea Grant agent here in Terrebonne Parish, so I knew a lot about and lived here a while. And so all of those things together, and you look at Reggie and Mitch on the side, great partners through the years. And when Reggie was a senator, at a critical time after Katrina, we could have gone in all kind of different directions, but Reggie being there, growing up at Pointe-aux-Champs, understanding things because he comes from the area,
Right.
and always looking at flood protection and restoration together, played a critical part in our success and my success on some of the legislation that Reggie passed, and we've come to be really good friends, and I've depended on him for a lot of different things and had a lot of success, and I think the people of Louisiana have had more success because of Reggie's position and what took place in Baton Rouge while he was there.
Right. And so I know that there have been a lot of people that have done a lot of good things. Tell me the progression of what they've called you over the years, because I find that very interesting.
Well,
I have a question first.
Okay, go ahead, Mitch.
You have a little bit of an accent. Did you say you were a secret agent?
Secret agent man, that's what I was. Exactly.
Man, it's what you say and
And
then
that
it's what people hear.
That actually happened with Stevie Smith at a meeting, Leadership Louisiana. I was telling this person I was a Sea Grant agent, and this girl standing next to her, "You are a secret agent?"
So thank you for the clarification.
But anyway, I've been called a lot of things. But one of the things I've been called, because I've been around so long,
Right.
I was called for a while the godfather of flood protection in the
Okay.
area. And then as I got older, in less respect, they called me the grandfather.
Oh, my.
And now they don't call me at all.
Well, some of them are trying to embrace your retirement, or if that's your rehirement, we know that you'll keep getting those calls. They'll never stop calling you.
Well, again, you get relationships and interests and things, and
Right.
there's always going to be that exchange of information and perspectives. And again, that's the important thing. I would call these guys over to our levee system. Just come ride. You always want fresh eyes, because sometimes you get too close to the table,
Right.
and you miss something on the edge. So you get other people on the outside with experience and know-how. You bring them, let them comment on it, and
Right.
it gives you a better perspective on what you need to do. Because the bottom line is this: you can't ever guarantee you're not going to flood.
Right.
So it's critical to do the best you can do with what you have, and keep on questioning how can we do better, because you can never guarantee you're going to win.
Well, but I can tell you this, the most difficult, most traumatic, and most impactful hurricane to ever hit our area, we had zero flooding.
Yeah.
And that's Ida. That is a credit to everything that you've worked on,
Well-
that everything we've done, and Mitch, what y'all are doing every day.
When you look at Wendell's system for Ida, I mean, you probably couldn't pick much worse of a path for South Lafourche.
No.
Exceeded what the design capacity of Wendell's system was.
Right.
But his relentless pursuit of always improving his current situation over 42 years, is the reason why South Lafourche did not flood. And so it's amazing, you know, in the face of opposition from the Corps and from the state, never giving up on knowing what was right and what he needed to do for South Lafourche. And he would have flooded if it were not for the efforts he took. So,
And not only
It's a-
flooded, I honestly believe you'd have had a catastrophic loss of life.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'd have started people moving out of South Lafourche, which would have started to ruin the economy of both Lafourche and Terrebonne. So, I mean, I told him, I said, well, your swan song is already done. I said, you can't ask for a better job to finish your career.
But also at the same time, that success showed a real problem. There was no way, just as Mitch was describing, this storm we should not have been able to handle. But we were lucky enough to have just enough
Right.
to handle the storm. But we hadn't flooded since 1985. No major flood since 1985, before our system was closed.
Right.
We closed the system around 1993. And so we had success, but the parish said evacuate. We wholeheartedly supported mandatory evacuation for
Right.
the whole system. If that storm had been 2 to 3 feet higher, we could have lost hundreds of people. 40%, I was talking to the fire department, and look, you talk about people who do work. The fire department was there that night. We got we were at the hospital, tried to get out of the hospital 3 times. We could not walk to our vehicles.
Right.
Finally got a call from the fire department. They had gotten out, commandeered a school bus, commandeered an excavator, actually cleared some roads that we could start using. They went and picked up 51 people in the middle of the storms with their fire station water coming in, with their homes water coming in. They still went and did their job. So, you know, that all kinds of people have to step up in this type of situation. But, you know, people are of course, very happy with the success we had.
Right.
But again, the water 2 to 3 feet higher and people would have died. And so that's why we have to work as hard as we can, because no matter how hard you work, you cannot guarantee you're not going to have an event.
Right.
That's right.
And you mentioned where y'all were. I want to run that video because I don't know that very many people have seen this enough, of showing the video of where y'all were at Lady of the Sea, centrally located. This is what happened for Ida and how dramatic that was as the roof was ripped right off of one of the more stable buildings.
Well, we go
down
to that because it's the
bayou.
biggest building in the area.
It's the largest and one of the most
And
stable.
look, I'm walking down the hall. There's a big picture window at the end of the hall, and the wind was coming from this direction. And all of a sudden, I start seeing like a scene from The Wizard of Oz. You know, when the house is floating around, it's all the roofing is flying up and down all kinds of different directions. Then the nurses are yelling at us, saying, "Get to the middle of the building," because they didn't know there'd be structural issues.
Right.
Now, as it was, just rain came down. But yeah, that's the whole point. You don't expect that to happen. But
Right.
that's what emergencies are about. That's why parish presidents listen to what the parish president says when he says,
Time to
a
get
mandatory
out.
evacuation, leave. Because you cannot control. It's luck. It's luck whether you survive or don't survive.
Right. Well, but it's the value of the vision of seeing what the need was. It's people like Reggie fighting for those things for years, both in his role politically and then his role with the Levee District, and Mitch being able to make sure that all of these programs and all of these projects are going the way they need to. That's the value of what the three of you bring to what we're talking about
So again,
today.
and I want to talk about what they've. It's unbelievable.
Right.
You know, I keep telling the story that you know, I was asked why were we 20 years ahead of Terrebonne, and this is when they formed the South Terrebonne Levee District. I remember we were at the courthouse, and so I told them the story. I said, "Look, Dick Guidry's house flooded 20 years before Leonard Chaubert's house flooded." Okay.
And that's the difference.
But the bottom line is there's no more lead anymore. I mean, these guys and all of the people in Terrebonne and the board members and all of the staff have worked so hard to make this tremendous. I mean, it's unbelievable how much improvement has been made in such a short time.
Right, go
You
ahead.
know, and we're gonna talk about some of the things in the second segment, but let me just mention this. I knew of Wendell Curall during my early years on the parish council.
Okay.
But when I got elected to the House of Representatives, I went and introduced myself, and he told me he had, you know, some of his ideas and plans and comprehensive hurricane protection. This was '95 when he started to push that real hard. So later, I became known as one of the top policymakers on coastal issues. So towards the end of my legislative career in the Senate, one of my colleagues says, "Reggie, where do you get all these ideas on bills for coastal issues. It's just amazing. I said, I got a guy in my district in South Lafourche, and he will give me his opinion any time of the day. He calls me frequently, and we just take his idea and we just try it out. And a lot of them have become major policy issues in this state.
I also want to say a lot of people have a lot of ideas. Reggie knew how to get things done. And that's because people trusted him, number one. We had two governors that trusted him implicitly. And because of that, he was able to accomplish those things that, again, there's a lot of good ideas are sent to Baton Rouge, but to get them actually accomplished, that's a whole nother thing.
Well, and it's got to start with an idea. It's got to start with an idea becoming a good idea, and then somebody to be able to champion that idea. But it also takes all of the great work to get those things accomplished. And it's such a and I say this every time, the partnerships that exist between Terrebonne and Lafourche in making Morganza to the Gulf the premier protection system that it is. And every time you guys come on, you're never satisfied with where we are. And when you make a great point about why, because as the Godfather would say, we're not done yet.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not done yet. And we'll keep calling for that reason. But Mitch, as y'all mentioned, hurricane preparedness means one thing to one group, but this is a 365-day proposal for you guys with the levee districts.
Yeah, like I like to say, you know, most governments work on the fiscal year. We work on what can we have in place for next hurricane season. And that's really how our board approaches what we do. We learn from storms. We learn what happened in Ida. We improve situations that need to be improved. But what further protection can we have in place for the following hurricane season? And so that's the urgency that we've learned. I mean, these guys have laid out the guidelines of how you get things done, and certainly we haven't been innovative in that. We've followed that process, but you know, one thing we always say is every day we're better than the last day, and that's not, you know, it's kind of like coach speak, but it's true. You know, I mean, we're adding more dirt every day than we did the day before, and making it better. So, you know, we get together once a year and plan out what we need to have in place, you know, for the next year, and that's really what we attack and go after. And we've been, you know, tremendously successful over the last 10 years in doing that. So,
Right. And it's worked.
That's right, it has, and, you know, every year like right now, our main priority, we're going back to the basics. When we first started to build a system on our own 15 years ago or so, made that decision. Tony Alford pushed it very hard, did a great job with it, was to focus on between the 5 bodies of Terrebonne Parish to get something built to a 10-foot level or 12-foot levees. Once we accomplished that goal, we started to try to connect to Cutoff and South Lafourche and going over all the way to Gibson as far as we can. Now, one of our main priorities is going back to the basics on the bottom, the most vulnerable parts of this system, trying to get them to 15 feet. And if you want to see what a 15-foot levee looks like, you know, I went a couple of days ago at the end of Ponachan, right above the marina. It's amazing to see a 15-foot levee in the area where basically I'm originally from. So it's very, very pleased to see that. But our goal is to do that in the whole southern end while we continue closing the gaps going to the east in Lafourche. And while we're working on with the Corps in Reach A, and if we have a hurricane, we might better try to close some more gaps between Bayou du Large and Houma. And you know, it's basically focusing where your vulnerabilities are, and you know, with the help of the parish government, Parish President Dove, we now he's pushing out a lot of pump stations and managing water we never dreamed we were able to do in the past. So now then I'm gonna have Mitch maybe talk a little bit about the lock, which we're going to bid with. We got plans and specs last week.
we
on that
did
lock.
after, you know, I'm 48, so I guess the majority of my life has been associated with the lock in some in some
fashion,
in
huh?
some way. But yes, we've got 100% plans and specs. We're doing the last bit of reviews to make sure all our comments have been addressed, and
Okay.
we're going to bid. In the next week and a half, we'll be out to bid for the lock. $285 million structure on the Houma Navigational Canal.
Right.
About a 4.5-year build process, but just unbelievable you know, I can sit up here. I mean, you know, I guess it's more remarkable when you go through all the struggles that we've been through to get here,
Right.
than I guess somebody on the street. But it's going to be the largest project ever done in Terrebonne Parish, and I can't tell you how important it is to the management of our system over the next 30 or 40 years. I mean, it's just the most important thing about Morganza. So.
And I would think that the pride that you will have standing on that lock would be very similar to what Reggie feels looking at that 15-foot levee in Pointe-Chain.
I bet so, yes.
And so, again, it's just one of those things where all of the vision, and Wendell is one of those people, he's superior based on our humble perspective.
And he told us.
And told us so, about the perspective of seeing these things and listening. And Reggie makes a great point about listening. And like Mitch said, listening to what we need to do and addressing all of those points and making that vision become a reality about keeping our communities safe without flooding.
But you know what? This can only accomplish because our people have elected officials that appointed people to the board that had one goal: keep order out of people's homes and businesses. Okay, and they've stayed straight on. Look at a lot of the political subdivisions that don't focus on what they're supposed to focus on.
Right.
We've been very fortunate that our elected officials have appointed people on our boards, and I've been doing this 42 years, and man, I mean nothing but do it the right way, pinch every penny, and make sure you give people what they paid for. You know,
Right.
we have a 1 penny sales tax, okay? And when people buy, and some people are poor, they buy their bread and their milk, and 1 penny goes to flood protection. We want to, and poor people suffer more from flooding than anybody else.
Right.
And so it's a thing I talk to our people. We better make sure those people get what they pay for, and our board makes sure that gets done.
And quite frankly, it took years, and I want you to be able to say what you need to, Reggie, about it. It took years of us taxing ourselves for the state and the national governments to go, you know what? It's time for us to step up. And now we do that with the Corps.
And like to follow up what Wendell said about a single purpose organizations, that's why you get more, you have an appointed board, 9 members on each, South Lafourche, Terrebonne, North Lafourche, I think it's 11, but their single focus is flood control, flood protection. They, if this was handled by the parish governing authorities, they have 100 issues to deal with.
Right.
And that's always something else around the corner. And then you have to make unpopular decisions when you all like on all commissioners and what we have to do. We have to make recommendations. Well, we need land rights for this levee or for this floodgate, and it's tough to get an elected official to vote to do something sometimes when it's not that popular.
Right.
And when he's affecting his own constituents. That's why having our commissioners appointed by the governor and removed one level and with that single focus is one of the, on the public policy issues, why it's so successful.
Right. It's a good system for what we get as a result as a good system.
I got to mention one thing about Reggie was talking about seeing that 15-foot levee.
Okay.
And we've been doing that. And what an amazing thing is I started seeing eagles on top of the levee. I'm saying, this is strange. Why would eagles be on top of the levee? Well, then I looked around. The levee's higher than the trees.
Because eagles will nest at the
And
highest
they want to be able
point,
to
right?
see. They want to
Right.
be able to see
They
where the
wanna-
fish are without having to fly all the time. This is no joke. I'm saying, why is this going on? But really, and it's sad to say that we have to do that. The Gulf has gotten closer to us.
It just
we
has.
see you look at maps in 1900 to today, and just this storm took out 100 square miles of marsh and wetlands, and 40 of that was around our levee system.
Right.
So we will have to do extra work to make up for that. As Mitch was saying,
And they are.
be better today than yesterday, and be better tomorrow than today. But now we got to catch up on that damage that was done to make sure we stay better.
Yeah. And, like a lot of people are still dealing with their homes. A lot of people are still dealing with the damage that was done to their homes. Y'all are dealing with the damage that was done to that ecosystem around the levee.
right.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you hear a lot from people, and you've really been hearing, well, Andrew passed here and I never had water. Well, that's not an intelligent statement, because we live in a dynamic environment that has changed unbelievably over the last 30 years. And as Wendell just said, with Ida, it changed greatly. So,
Right.
every day is you're dealing with new change. It's a learning process as you go forward where you need to, we have good ideas about what we need to do, but you got to learn from what happens and improve upon it, or you're going to be in a bind.
Yeah, we got to look at what's been done, and I like what Reggie had to say about it, and be able to find a way to champion that with one focus in mind. And that, again, I say it all the time, the partnerships that we have had with our levee boards about being able to work together. And my gosh, if there's any red tape, it gets discolored or cut as quickly as possible
Yeah, I mean,
to get things moving.
we had Coastal Day here recently.
Right.
And I think President Dove was joking that Tony Alford was, similar to General Patton, and, very much so singular focus.
That's right.
Every day, what are you doing to make it better? If you don't have that passion and that leadership, then we don't get to where we are for sure.
Look, and I'm one of those people that I get to learn about this from you guys and very much unknowledgeable about it, but I marvel at the fact that every time you guys come on, it's about what are we going to do to make it better?
That's right.
This is where we are. What are we doing to make it better? The new pump at the new lock at the H&C is going to be remarkable. And it's coming to fruition because people had the vision, people saw the need, we championed it, got funded for it, and now we're moving forward with it.
And that was funded with BP Restore Act dollars, and first done when then State Representative Gordon Dove was on CPRA, and funded with BP money. So the largest BP project for the whole state is going to be that lock, and the largest public works project for this whole region of the state will be that project. So.
But people talk about passion. I heard passion a couple times.
Often.
And I tell people, don't misinterpret my emotions. That's not passion you're seeing. It's fear. I mean, I fear loss of community. I fear loss of lives, my family,
Right.
my friends, the community I grew up in. It can be taken away by a storm.
Right.
St. Bernard is never going to be the same. And we know if we get it, and we can't guarantee we're not going to, it will never be the same if we ever have 8 to 10 feet of water inside those systems.
Well, that fear has been well served because it has created passion to make changes and make impacts that are not only going to be lasting, but for generations of people being protected and protecting that loss of life. Thank you all for what y'all have done. Mr. Winter, congratulations again for the retiring and the rehiring. We'll see you again soon, I'm sure, as we'll invite you back. But thank y'all for being a part of this today. We really much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank y'all. All right, guys, that'll do it for this particular edition of Going Public. Don't go anywhere. A lot more local programming right here on HTV.